Jefferson, Clinton, and George. Good morning, and welcome, and thank you for joining. It's your truly Spring G coming to you live, of course. I'm giving you a live outlook or broadcast of what is happening with the inauguration today, coming to you live from your truly Spring G. Yes, and of course, I have told you guys that I will be broadcasting to you the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States of America. And of course, I said it, and that is what we will be presenting to you this morning. Yours truly, Spring G. I want you to see the way I present myself. So I'm gonna remove this off the screen so you can see that, yes, we are here presenting to you the 45th president, 46th president, my mistake, 46, 46, 46 president of the United States of America. Yours truly, Spring G is coming to you live on StreamYard, live on YT as well. Thank you very much for joining this morning. Thank you very much for being here with me. And of course, as I said, I make sure I present myself to you. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for stopping by. From yours truly, Spring G. Yes, that is me. Yep. Okay. Hot banner. Yep. Well, this one I would like that. This one. This. Is, I believe on the left, that's former Vice President Dan Quayle speaking. Let's listen. The chief of inaugural ceremonies, Maria Miller Lohmeyer, the acting deputy House Sergeant at Arms, Kevin Grubbs, and the acting deputy Senate Sergeant at Arms, United States Capitol Police Officer, Private First Class Eugene O. Goodman.
Today, what we're seeing that's so different, unfortunately, because of coronavirus, is a lot of dignitaries and selected members of their families, just 2,000 people there in all, versus the 200,000 when the American people get to physically take part in this day. The efforts are being made to make it a virtual event with the coronavirus pandemic and to keep this a safe event, and hopefully everybody is taking part at home. And it sounds like we're getting ready for another entrance here with the horns blaring. It is a beautiful sight, a little bit of sunshine this inauguration day, which isn't always the case.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, Kamala Debbie Harris, and Mr. Douglas Imhoff.
Thank you, Chandibu. Chandibu, thank you very much for joining. Of course, yes, truly Spring G has presented. This is how I present myself to be at the inauguration. This is how yours truly present yourself to be at the inauguration. Thank you very much, my sister. Thank you very much for being here. Good morning. If it's morning now in the Philippines, good morning to you guys. Thank you very much for joining the live stream of yours truly Spring G. And of course, as I said, this is how I present myself to be at the inauguration. Thank you very much. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you for watching as well. From yours truly Spring G. We're trying to work on the quality, guys. Kamala Harris is a Jamaican father, and of course her mom is from India. So she's an immigrant parentage child of immigrant of the United States of America. Become the first female to be a vice president, the first black Asian, or whatever you want to refer to her as, that has become the vice president of the United States of America. First woman, first black woman as well. Don't forget that, guys. First woman and the first black woman to be ever selected, inaugurated for that spot. First woman, first black. Trying to get a good quality, guys.
And there you see Vice President-elect Kamala Harris and her husband. Their fist bumps are the modes of expression, of loving and respectful expression today. And you know, Kim, as I watch and listen and just sort of see this in an abstract way, it's interesting because although
Thank you for being here. Thank you very much for joining, guys. Really appreciate you for taking the time out to stop by the live stream.
To get away from royalty and monarchy, obviously. It feels royal. It feels like our version of royalty to see the flags on the
First black woman. First black woman.
McCarthy, Staff Representative Bridget Brennan, accompanying House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steny Hoyer, and Mrs. Yvette Lewis. Staff Representative Kate Knudsen, accompanying Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi and Mr. Paul Pelosi. Staff Representative Lindsey Kerr, accompanying the Honorable Amy Klobuchar and Mr. John Vespa. Hager Pucko, accompanying Senate Majority Leader, the Honorable Mitch McConnell and the Honorable Elaine L. Chao. And Staff Representative Rochelle Reeves. And there is President-elect Joe Biden and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden. Kim, they too will cover the same amount of ground on those marble floors and steps as they make their way. The future First Lady there doing what we instinctually do, wanting to extend a hand, whether that was a gratitude or wanting a handshake. But even with gloves, they are obviously so focused on safety.
Hope you're hearing the audio clear, guys.
his wife, Elaine Chow, and coming down the steps. Slowly and deliberately, we hear the military personnel giving out their orders. They are not at ease today for many reasons.
What a day, and you wonder what's going on through their minds right now. Maybe it's just let's walk down these stairs and make it to the doors. But 35 plus years as a senator, vice president, running for president unsuccessfully in his past, and now here he is about to become the 46th president of these United States, and make his inaugural address, something that the world is waiting for, and of course this nation. And it's supposed to be a message of unity, and there's a lot of work to be done in that department. But today, we are one, and we're watching something that you may only see a few times in your lifetime, and this is definitely one of a kind.
When we see or hear the cue to mute ourselves so you can listen, we'll certainly do that. We are expected to hear from Amy Klobuchar, who you see on the left in that mustard-colored coat, who will be making some opening remarks.
Ceremonies. Fitzhugh Elder IV, the acting House Senate Sergeant at Arms, Tim Blodgett, and the acting Senate Sergeant at Arms.
It is nice that we have this announcer with a terrific voice, Kim, to help us recognize some of these people in an inauguration like none other. It's hard sometimes to point out faces if you're just looking at eyebrows and hairdos.
Yeah, some pipes, doesn't he?
Yes.
And the horns are beautiful. The stage is beautiful and set, and everything is perfection today, except for, of course, the added masks and the lack of the public being able to attend. But we're making the best of it here, and you actually get just a great front row seat when you want to get every best camera shot. And we're about to see the next president of the United States walk through those doors, and then the proceedings will begin.
The President-elect of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., and Dr. Jill Biden.
Rich, thank you for coming, Rich, thank you.
Please welcome the Honorable Amy Klobuchar.
Vice President Pence, Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect, members of Congress and the judicial branch, former presidents and first ladies, vice presidents, leaders from abroad, and a whole bunch of Bidens. America, welcome to the 59th presidential inauguration, where in just a few moments, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take their solemn oaths. This ceremony is the culmination of 244 years of a democracy. It is the moment when leaders brought to this stage by the will of the people promised to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish it and defend it. It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, guardians of our country. Have we become too jaded, too accustomed to the ritual of the passing of the torch of democracy to truly appreciate what a blessing and a privilege it is to witness this moment? I think not. 2 weeks ago, when an angry, violent mob staged an insurrection and desecrated this temple of our democracy, it awakened us to our responsibilities as Americans. This is the day when our democracy picks itself up, brushes off the dust, and does what America always does: goes forward as a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This conveyance of a sacred trust between our leaders and our people takes place in front of this shining Capitol dome for a reason. When Abraham Lincoln gave his first inaugural address in front of this Capitol, the dome was only partially constructed.
Okay, my sister, sleep good. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate you on your time. From your Julie Spring G. I will necessarily that you'll be sleeping, but at least I might watch a replay because I'll be making sure I get all the information, all the clippings and views that you will able to see the replay. So thank you very much, Enrich, from your Julie Spring G.
Generations of Americans gave their lives to preserve our republic in this place. Great legislation to protect civil rights and economic security and lead the world was debated and crafted under this dome. Now it falls on all of us, not just the two leaders we are inaugurating today, to take up the torch of our democracy, not as a weapon of political arson, but as an instrument for good. We pledge today never to take our democracy for granted as we celebrate its remarkable strength. We celebrate its resilience, its grit. We celebrate the ordinary people doing extraordinary things for our nation, the doctors and nurses on the front line of this pandemic, the officers in the Capitol, a new generation never giving up hope for justice. We celebrate a new president, Joe Biden, who vows to restore the soul of America and cross the river of our divides to a higher plane. And we celebrate our first African American, first Asian American, and first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, who stands on the shoulders of so many on this platform who have forged the way to this day. When she takes the oath of office, little girls and boys across the world will know that anything and everything is possible. And in the end, that is America, our democracy, a country of so much good. And today, on these Capitol steps and before this glorious field of flags, we rededicate ourselves to its cause. Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce to you the senator who has worked with me and so many others to make this ceremony possible, my friend and the chair of the inaugural committee, Missouri Senator Roy Blunt.
Well, I should have known when Senator Klobuchar got involved, at least there'd be a touch of snow up here this morning. Of all the things we considered, I don't think snow was on my agenda until I walked out the door a moment ago. But thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and thanks to the other members of the Joint Congressional Committee on the Inauguration as we officially begin the 59th inaugural ceremony. I also want to thank the Joint Committee staff and our partners, particularly our security partners, for the way they dealt with unprecedented circumstances. When I chaired the inauguration 4 years ago, I shared President Reagan's 1981 description of this event as commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Miraculous because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Americans have celebrated this moment during war, during depression, and now during pandemic. Once again, all three branches of our government come together as the Constitution envisions. Once again, we renew our commitment to our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union. That theme for this inauguration, our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union, was announced by the Joint Committee before the election, with the belief that the United States can only fulfill its promise and set an example for others if we are always working to be better than we have been. The Constitution established that determined democracy with its first three words, declaring the people as the source of the government. The Articles of Confederation hadn't done that. The Magna Carta hadn't done that. Only the Constitution says the government exists because the people are the source of the reason it exists. They immediately followed those first three words with the words to form a more perfect union. The founders did not say to form a perfect union. They did not claim that in our new country nothing would need to be improved. Fortunately, they understood that always working to be better would be the hallmark of a great democracy. The freedoms we have today, the nation we have today, is not here just because it happened, and they aren't complete. A great democracy working through the successes and failures of our history, striving to be better than it had been. And we are more than we have been, and we are less than we hope to be. The assault on our capital at this very place just 2 weeks ago reminds us that a government designed to balance and check itself is both fragile and resilient. During the last year, the pandemic challenged our free and open society and called for extraordinary determination and sacrifice, and still challenges us today. Meeting that challenge head on have been and are healthcare workers, scientists, first responders, essential frontline workers, and so many others we depend on in so many ways. Today we come to this moment, people all over the world, as we're here, are watching and will watch what we do here. Our government comes together, the Congress and the courts join the transition of executive responsibility. One political party more pleased today and on every inaugural day than the other. But this is not a moment of division, it's a moment of unification. A new administration begins and brings with it a new beginning. And with that, our great national debate goes forward, and a determined democracy will continue to be essential in pursuit of a more perfect union and a better future for all Americans. What a privilege for me to join you today. Thank you. I'm pleased to call to the podium a longtime friend of the President-elect and his family, Father Leo O'Donovan, to lead us in an invocation. Please stand if you are able and remain standing for the national anthem and the pledge to our flag. Gracious and merciful God, at this sacred time we come before you indeed on our knees. But we come still more with hope and with our eyes raised anew to the vision of a more perfect union in our land, a union of all our citizens to promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We are a people of many races, creeds, and colors, national backgrounds, cultures, and styles, now far more numerous and on land much vaster than when Archbishop John Carroll wrote his prayer for the inauguration of George Washington 232 years ago. Archbishop Carroll prayed that you, O Creator of all, would assist with your Holy Spirit of counsel and fortitude the President of these United States, that his administration may be conducted in righteousness and be eminently useful to your people. Today we confess our past failures to live according to our vision of equality, inclusion, and freedom for all. Yet we resolutely commit still more now to renewing the vision, to caring for one another in word and deed, especially the least fortunate among us, and so becoming a light for the world. There is a power in each and every one of us that lives by turning to every other one of us, a thrust of the Spirit to cherish and care and stand by others, and above all those most in need. It is called love, and its path is to give ever more of itself. Today it is called American patriotism, born not of power and privilege, but of care for the common good, with malice toward none and with charity for all. For our new president, we beg of you the wisdom Solomon sought when he knelt before you and prayed for an understanding heart, so that I can govern your people and know the difference between right and wrong. We trust in the counsel of the letter of James. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Pope Francis has reminded us how important it is to dream together. By ourselves, he wrote, we risk seeing mirages, things that are not there. Dreams, on the other hand, are built together. Be with us, holy mystery of love, as we dream together. Help us under our new president to reconcile the people of our land, restore our dream and invest it with peace and justice and the joy that is the overflow of love. To the glory of your name, forever. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of our national colors by the Armed Forces Color Guard, the singing of our national anthem, and for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ladies and gentlemen, here for the singing of our national anthem, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band, please welcome Lady Gaga.
swine nights last evening, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. On our ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket the bombastic came through the night, that our flag was still
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the city of South Fulton, Georgia Fire and Rescue Department, President of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 3920, Fire Captain Andrea M. Hall, for the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. What you are all about to be part of, America, is a historic moment of firsts. To administer the oath to our first African American, our first Asian American, and our first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, it is my great privilege to welcome to the inaugural stage the first Latina to ever serve on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the oath of office followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear. I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I take this obligation freely. That I take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. That I will well and faithfully discharge. That I will well and faithfully discharge. The duties of the office on which I am about to enter. The duties of the office upon which I am about to enter. So help me God. So help me God.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please welcome Jennifer Lopez to perform This Land Is Your Land and America the Beautiful, accompanied by members of the President's own United States Marine Band.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking down that Ribbon Highway, I saw a coffee and in the skyway, I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Oh, this land, oh, this land. This land was made for you and me. Oh, this land, oh, this land. This land was made for you and me. You and me. Oh, from sea to shining una nación bajo Dios indivisible con libertad y justicia para todos. Was made for you and me.
Well, that was great. The sun is shining, and Mr. President-elect, this is the first inauguration in the history of America where J-Lo was the warm-up act for Chief Justice Roberts. With that, it is now my distinct honor to introduce the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, John Roberts, to administer the President
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear. I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear. That I will faithfully execute. That I will faithfully execute. The office of President of the United States. Office of President of the United States. And will, to the best of my ability. Will, to the best of my ability. Preserve, protect, and defend. Preserve, protect, and defend. The Constitution of the United States. Constitution of the United States. So help you God. So help me God. Congratulations, Mr. President.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
My fellow Americans, a moment we have all been waiting for. It is now my great privilege and high honor to be the first person to officially introduce the 46th President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden Jr.
Welcome, welcome, and thank you very much for being here, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Chief Justice Roberts, Vice President Harris, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, Leader McConnell, Vice President Pence, my distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. This is America's day. This is democracy's day. A day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve. Crucible for the ages. America has been tested anew, and America has risen to the challenge. Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy. The people, the will of the people has been heard, and the will of the people has been heeded. We've learned again that democracy is precious. Democracy is fragile. And at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed. So now,
On this hallowed ground where just a few days ago, violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation, we come together as one nation, under God, indivisible, to carry out the peaceful transfer of power as we have for more than 2 centuries. As we look ahead in our uniquely American way, restless, bold, optimistic, and set our sights on a nation we know we can be and we must be. I thank my predecessors of both parties for their presence here today. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I know the resilience of our Constitution and the strength of our nation, as does President Carter, who I spoke with last night, who cannot be with us today, but whom we salute for his lifetime of service. I've just taken the sacred oath each of those patriots have taken. The oath first sworn by George Washington. But the American story depends not on any one of us, not on some of us.
Thank you for coming again, sis. Thank you very much.
On we, the people, who seek a more perfect union. This is a great nation.
Festia, thank you, Festia, thank you,
Over
Festia.
the centuries, through storm and
Village,
strife,
thank you, Village.
peace
Lyria,
and
thank you.
war, we've come so far, but we still have far to go. We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities.
Lily,
Much to
thank you,
repair,
thank you.
much to restore, much to heal, much to build, and much to gain. Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged,
American reaction, thank you. I'm
challenging, and
Enrich,
difficult than the time we're in now.
Sweetly, Chandibu.
Once in a century virus that silently stalks the country. It's taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed. A cry for racial justice, some 400 years in the making, moves us. The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself. A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, that we must confront and we will defeat. To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. In another January, on New Year's Day in 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. When he put pen to paper, the president said, and I quote, "If my name ever goes down into history, it'll be for this act, and my whole soul is in it." My whole soul is in it. Today, on this January day, my whole soul is in this. Bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause. Uniting to fight the foes we face: anger, resentment, and hatred, extremism, lawlessness, violence, disease, joblessness, and hopelessness. With unity, we can do great things, important things. We can right wrongs. We can put people to work in good jobs. We can teach our children in safe schools. We can overcome the deadly virus. We can reward work and rebuild the middle class and make healthcare secure for all. We can deliver racial justice, and we can make America once again the leading force for good in the world. I know speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish fantasy these days. I know the forces that divide us are deep and they are real. But I also know they are not new. Our history has been a constant struggle between the American ideal that we're all are created equal and the harsh, ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, demonization have long torn us apart. The battle is perennial, and victory is never assured. Through Civil War, the Great Depression, World War, 9/11, through struggle, sacrifice, and setbacks, our better angels have always prevailed. In each of these moments, enough of us have come together to carry all of us forward. And we can do that now. History, faith, and reason show the way of unity. We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors. We can treat each other with dignity and respect. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos. This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge. And unity is the path forward. And we must meet this moment as the United States of America. If we do that, I guarantee you we will not fail. We have never, ever, ever, ever failed in America. We've acted together. And so today, at this time, in this place, let's start afresh. All of us. Let's begin to listen to one another again. Hear one another. See one another. Show respect to one another. Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured. My fellow Americans, we have to be different than this. America has to be better than this. And I believe America is so much better than this. Just look around. Here we stand in the shadow of the Capitol Dome, as was mentioned earlier, completed amid the Civil War, when the Union itself was literally hanging in the balance. Yet we endured. We prevailed. Here we stand, looking out on the great mall where Dr. King spoke of his dream. Here we stand where 108 years ago, at another inaugural, thousands of protesters tried to block brave women marching for the right to vote. And today, we mark the swearing in of the first woman in American history elected to national office, Vice President Kamala Harris. Don't tell me things can't change. Here we stand, across Potomac from Arlington Cemetery, for heroes who gave the last full measure of devotion, rest in eternal peace. And here we stand, just days after a riotous mob thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people, to stop the work of our democracy, to drive us from this sacred ground. It did not happen. It will never happen. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Not ever. To all those who supported our campaign, I'm humbled by the faith you placed in us. To all those who did not support us, let me say this. Hear me out as we move forward. Take a measure of me and my heart. If you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy. That's America. The right to dissent peaceably than the guardrails of our republic is perhaps this nation's greatest strength. Yet hear me clearly. This agreement must not lead to disunion. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did. Many centuries ago, St. Augustine, a saint of my church, wrote that a people was a multitude defined by the common objects of their love. Defined by the common objects of their love. What are the common objects we as Americans love that define us as Americans? I think we know. Opportunity, security, liberty, dignity, respect, honor, and yes, the truth. Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson. There is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. And each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, especially as leaders. Leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies. Look, I understand that many of my fellow Americans view the future with fear and trepidation. I understand they worry about their jobs. I understand, like my dad, they lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering, can I keep my health care? Can I pay my mortgage? Thinking about their families, about what comes next. I promise you, I get it. But the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions, distrusting those who don't look like you, or worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, or rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts, if we show a little tolerance and humility, and if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would say, just for a moment, stand in their shoes. Because here's the thing about life. There's no accounting for what fate will deal you. Some days, when you need a hand, there are other days when we're called to lend a hand. That's how it has to be. That's what we do for one another. And if we are this way, our country will be stronger, more prosperous, more ready for the future. And we can still disagree. My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we're going to need each other. We need all our strength to persevere through this dark winter. We're entering what may be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus. We must set aside politics and finally face this pandemic as one nation. One nation. And I promise you this, as the Bible says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. We will get through this together. Together. Look, folks, all my colleagues I serve with in the House and the Senate up here, we all understand the world is watching all of us today. So here's my message to those beyond our borders. America has been tested, and we've come out stronger for it. We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again. Not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's challenges. And we'll lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. strong and trusted partner for peace, progress, and security. Look, you all know we've been through so much in this nation. And my first act as president, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer. Remember all those who we lost this past year to the pandemic. Those 400,000 fellow Americans, moms, dads, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, and co-workers. We will honor them for becoming the people and the nation we know we can and should be. So I ask you, let's say a silent prayer for those who've lost their lives and those left behind, and for our country. Amen. Folks, this is the time of testing. We face an attack on our democracy and on truth, a raging virus, growing inequity, the sting of systemic racism, a climate in crisis, America's role in the world. Any one of these would be enough to challenge us in profound ways. But the fact is, we face them all at once, presenting this nation with one of the gravest responsibilities we've had. Now we're going to be tested. Are we going to step up? All of us? It's time for boldness, for there's so much to do. And this is certain. I promise you, we will be judged, you and I, by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era. We will rise to the occasion is the question. Will we master this rare and difficult hour? Will we meet our obligations and pass along a new and better world to our children? I believe we must. I'm sure you do as well. I believe we will. And when we do, we'll write the next great chapter in the history of the United States of America, the American story. A story that might sound something like a song that means a lot to me. It's called American Anthem. There's one verse that stands out, at least for me, and it goes like this. The work and prayers of century have brought us to this day. What shall be our legacy? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart when my days are through. America, America, I gave my best to you. Let's us add our own work and prayers to the unfolding story of our great nation. If we do this, then when our days are through, our children and our children's children will say of us, they gave their best, they did their duty, they healed a broken land. My fellow Americans, I close the day where I began, with a sacred oath. Before God and all of you, I give you my word. I will always level with you. I will defend the Constitution. I'll defend our democracy. I'll defend America. And I'll give all of you, keep everything I do in your service, thinking not of power, but of possibilities, not of personal interest, but the public good. And together we shall write an American story of hope, not fear, of unity, not division, of light, not darkness, a story of decency and dignity, love and healing, greatness and goodness. May this be the story that guides us, the story that inspires us, and the story that tells ages yet to come that we answered the call of history. We met the moment. Democracy and hope, truth and justice did not die in our watch, but thrived. That America secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon to the world. That is what we owe our forebears, one another, and generation to follow. So, with purpose and resolve, we turn to those tasks of our time, sustained by faith, driven by conviction, devoted to one another and the country we love with all our hearts. May God bless America. And may God protect our troops. Thank you, America.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Garth Brooks to perform Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. But now I see when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. If I can ask you to sing this last verse with me, not just the people here, but the people at home, at work, as one, united. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Hard not to be reminded of President Obama's singing that same song at the Mother Emanuel Church. A song that in our culture is as close to both poetry and prayer as you could possibly come. And we're going to finish with those two things. Let me introduce Amanda Gorman, our nation's first ever National Poet Laureate.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. And the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left with. Every breath from our bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limned hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Thank you, Amanda Gorman. Now for our benediction, I'm pleased to introduce Reverend Dr. Sylvester Beeman, the pastor of the Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Wilmington, Delaware, a friend of President Biden for 30 years.
As a nation and people of faith gathered in this historical moment, let us unite in prayer. God, we gather under the beauty of your holiness and the holiness of your beauty. We seek your face, your smile, your warm embrace. We petition you once more in this celebration. We pray for divine favor upon our president, Joseph R. Biden, and our First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, and their family. We further ask that you would extend the same favor upon our Vice President, Kamala D. Harris, and our second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, and their family. More than ever, they and our nation need you. We need you, for in you we discover our common humanity. In our common humanity, we will seek out the wounded and bind their wounds. We will seek healing for those who are sick and diseased. We will mourn our dead. We will befriend the lonely, the least, and the left out. We will share our abundance with those who are hungry. We will do justly to the oppressed, acknowledge sin, and seek forgiveness, thus grasping reconciliation. In discovering our humanity, we will seek the good in and for all our neighbors. We will love the unlovable, remove the stigma of the so-called untouchables. We will care for our most vulnerable, our children, the elderly, emotionally challenged, and the poor. We will seek rehabilitation beyond correction. We will extend opportunity to those locked out of opportunity of our enemies. We will make friends of our enemies. People, your people, shall no longer raise up weapons against one another. We will rather use our resources for the national good and become a beacon of life and goodwill to the world. And neither shall we learn hatred anymore. We'll lie down in peace and not make our neighbors afraid. In you, oh God, we discover our humanity. In our humanity, we discover our commonness. Beyond the difference of color, creed, origin, political party, ideology, geography, and personal preferences. We'll become greater stewards of your environment, preserving the land, reaping from it a sustainable harvest, and securing its wonder and miracle-giving power for generations to come. This is our benediction, that from these hallowed grounds, where slaves labored to build this shrine and citadel to liberty and democracy, let us all acknowledge, from the indigenous Native American to those who recently received their citizenship, from the African American to those whose foreparents came from Europe and every corner of the globe, from the wealthy to those struggling to make it, from every human being, regardless of their choices, that this is our country. As such, teach us, O God. As such, teach us, O God, to live in it, love in it, be healed in it, and reconcile to one another in it, lest we miss kingdom's goal. To your glory, majesty, dominion, and power forever. Hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. In the strong name of our collective faith. Amen.
Please remain standing as the Armed Forces Color Guard retires our national colors. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and remain in your seats while the President and official party depart the platform. For safety reasons, your ushers will release your section in an organized manner, following the playing of our national march, The Stars and Stripes Forever.
This is Adam Williams. You've been watching 7 News special coverage. The inauguration of now President Joe with their spouses, respectively, greeting other first families and second families. As you can see, there is President Clinton with now President Biden and former President. We can say with ease and as a breath of fresh air that this event has gone off peacefully, on time, with expressions of unity moving forward and the nation.
We'll continue to bring you these inaugural festivities. They do continue. Right now, we'll be watching everyone depart this portion of the program. Eventually, we'll see the signing-in ceremony, and we'll also see an honoring of the military. And then they will be laying a wreath at the Arlington National Cemetery. So still a lot more to come this evening. There is also a big event starting at 7:30 tonight. I think in lieu of what we can't traditionally see. But there you have it, the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden, and his wife Jill. And by the way, yes, so Vice President Kamala Harris, her husband Doug Emhoff, actually picked that title for himself.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yes, the second gentleman. So that's new vocabulary. And there were a lot of firsts now.
Sure were. And we see, as we normally see after inauguration, we see, there's Lady Gaga, by the way, in the bright red fluffy dress. That's probably not the terminology in the fashion world, but she made quite an impact with her singing this morning. And there is Vice President Kamala Harris heading inside, and just jog back to covering a few inaugurations where the cameras are stationed inside the Capitol building. And there's sort of a long journey. They'll go into an executive office of sorts, or at least a designated area of the Capitol, and we'll get those specifics laid out for you. But you might recall during the last inauguration, the Speaker of the House is there to sign paperwork, and sometimes, I don't know if they drop any gavels, but there's certainly a lot of ceremonial signage, and by that I mean putting the John Hancock to pen to paper to make this even more official. But it is official. The 46th president of the United States, Joe Biden, and Vice President Kamala Harris with VIPs in attendance, greeting, catching up, and the cameras follow as they make their way through these hollowed corridors through our nation's capital, and mark a new transition, a new point in history moving forward.
So a lot of traditions that we don't see today, but many that we do. And this is one of them as everyone departs the ceremony. As you said, Lady Gaga performed. Interesting, I think that music can speak to everyone. And there were some really powerful moments there with Lady Gaga and J-Lo and Garth Brooks. Also the poet.
Amanda Gorman.
Yeah, she was incredible. We'll talk more about that. And we also have some guests here today. A good longtime friend, of the president is going to be joining us. We also have a historian here today to sort of look back at what we've seen, and we'll look forward. Dan Housley is live in our nation's capital, and you're one of the few to be able to attend, as only 2,000 people were there rather than the 200,000 we typically see and that you have experienced in the past, Dan. Your thoughts now?
Well, we got the kind of speech in general that we thought we were going to get, heavy on calls for unity. President Biden talking for about 25 minutes, which turns out to be slightly longer than some recent inauguration speeches, but didn't feel particularly long. He talked and said, "My whole soul is in this cause, the cause of uniting the people." He talked about the forces that divide us are deep and real, and he said, we can join forces to stop the shouting and lower the voices. He did refer specifically to the riots of 2 weeks ago and talked about the need to confront the rise of extremism. He said they tried to stop democracy, but then in the strongest terms said that did not happen, will not happen, not today, and not ever. He pledged that he's going to be a president for all Americans, something we heard on the campaign trail and heard again today. And he didn't mention President Trump at all by name, but he did refer to we must reject the culture where facts are manufactured, obviously referring to some of the feelings that led to the attack on the Capitol here, the feeling that an election was stolen, and some of the comments from the president and others that helped that crowd believe that. But he spent most of the time talking about the way to move forward. And he said that we must end this uncivil war. He says we can do this if we show a little tolerance. And he said he's going to lead by the power of example himself. So strong words from now President Biden. The question will be how to enact this in policy, but it starts with the demonstration. And he demonstrated that through his words today. We'll see whether he demonstrates it in action going forward, whether he is able to bring with him not only those who voted for him, but those who did not vote for him. He did take a moment of silence as well. He said it was his first act as president. He wanted to remember the victims of COVID, and that's something he's been doing a lot for the last 24 hours, including the beautiful ceremony yesterday, last night at the reflecting pool, and now in his speech, he did take time to pause and remember. This was, there was some good lines, some high language, but this was nothing like President Obama's high rhetoric. There was also an everyman quality to many of the comments where he said simply, I'm always level with you, talking to the American people in the simplest terms. But again, the question is, where do we go forward from this? This is the start, but that's all you can expect today. And in words, it appears Joe Biden has succeeded in reaching out to all the American people. Now we'll see whether he does in action and whether the American people and competing parties reach back to him as well. Adam, Kim.
As you're speaking, just people can see the pictures themselves, but we were just watching as Lady Gaga was having some words with President Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama. So the crowd here is sort of mingling, still with masks. And actually, they seem to be having quite the conversation. Won't be reading lips today with the coronavirus. But as I said, all the living presidents, with the exception of former President Donald Trump, are there, and the Carters were not able to make it, but sent their well wishes.
Dan Housley, there in the nation's capital, you mentioned that President Biden has always sort of been an everyman kind of person and politician and figure. Dan, I've read in certain books about the now president who has in the past resisted showing up to his hometown in Wilmington with a huge motorcade and with guards right at his side, Secret Service guards. Because he wants to come off as not above anyone else or VIP status. Obviously, that will change with levels of protection that a president gets. But I think it is interesting that we still could sense that part of the president's personality and mission to, quote, be one of us.
Yes, we see this pendulum swing often in the presidencies. After President Nixon came President Jimmy Carter. The homespun nature of him was something that the Americans wanted after what they experienced with President Nixon. And similarly, this was a choice by an American electorate who wanted something different in this president, and indeed they are going to get that. Interesting you talk about him going off on his own. We saw him go to Mass this morning, and the question going forward will be, what will we see on every Sunday? Because he's a regular churchgoer. Will he pick a church here in Washington and be seen going to church regularly? That's something we haven't seen over the last 4 years. President Trump having his faith differently. President Biden wears his faith on his sleeve and has been very public about that. So it'll be interesting to see whether he chooses various churches around the Washington area to visit on Sunday mornings, or whether he picks one. But that's likely a picture we're going to see repeated, is Joe Biden going to church, like so many Americans on Sunday. And so there will be, I think, these images of a President Biden, which by choice or by nature are more average American as any president can be in the protected bubble, of course.
And Dan, as you speak of faith, there was a worship service this morning, and we already saw sort of a shift in the balance of power just by seeing the people who were there to join into that service. Can you speak to that?
Well, it's interesting because we were told that the Republicans and Democrats were both voted, that were invited there. We were going to see the Democratic and Republican leaders of the Senate and the House, and we did see Senator Mitch McConnell there, the Republican majority, now minority leader there, but I don't think we did see the House Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy, there. So we did see some visions of unity, but possibly some of the opposite as well. So it's always a question of how far these images will go, and even if the images go a certain distance, what will happen when we get to the reality of the political factions having different views on how to go forward. But certainly there is an attempt, and even just you see on that stage here with the former presidents, current presidents, with the political leaders of all stripes up there together. Certainly this is a day where both sides try to show that this is an American event and not a Democratic or Republican event.
And we see unity when we see Senator Amy Klobuchar and Elaine Chao and Mitch McConnell standing next to each other. There is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi in the aqua-colored top. As they line these steps in another gesture of symbolism and respect and honor to the new president and vice president. But I do believe that, and maybe you can help set us straight, Dan, as we look ahead and sort of figure out the itinerary before they walk down those steps. there's some paperwork to be done. Is it in the Capitol building or do they move to a different location? And certainly we won't be seeing the parade and the things of the past that we've seen due to security and also coronavirus concerns.
Yeah, that's the question, is what is going to be changed?
So of course you see yours truly. I was in Washington. Now I'm back on the set with you guys. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much for your time. From yours truly, Spring G. Of course, I'm gonna end the live stream. Thank you very much. As you see, I bring to you live the inauguration of yours truly. Kamala Harris, the first black woman and the 46th president as well, Mr. Joe Biden. So of course you get it live on your truly Spring G StreamYard and of course on YT for all those persons who wasn't able to watch it on their television. Of course I brought it live to you. Thank you very much, and of course you can see yours truly was well presented. Of course I tried to get a good haircut for the occasion, for the moment. Thank you very much. So as you can see, I will just get snaps of all the persons at this moment that are standing in front of the White House as they're about to go down the steps. Their husband and wife together.
Part of this departure ceremony as the transition of power becomes official. So I think the Pences will depart. The rest of the presidential party will be going somewhere, as we were just told, a holding room for about half an hour, and then they will take part in the signing ceremony.
I just noticed, in an effort to stay safe, there were no hugs or handshakes, but I saw both Vice President Kamala Harris and former Senator
Elizabeth Warren out of Massachusetts, right here, as you can see, she is going down the steps.
Their hands to their hearts, which is heartfelt, because we're so limited and we've been so without contact.
And of course,
and to see
yours truly, Kamala Harris, the now Vice President. See her there in her bright purple outfit. See her husband and Mike Pence and his wife as well.
Sort of a igniting peace, perhaps. Maybe not for all, as we should point out.
So from one Vice P to one ex Vice President.
For every voter out there, for every member of the various political parties. But it is a day that we are all Americans and that we see a new beginning.
Well, the theme today is America United, and that's something that will sort of be reflecting on the inauguration speech and how much of an impact that might have, what the rest of the party may be feeling today, and how we move forward. But here, as I mentioned, the departure ceremony for the now former vice president, and here is now Vice President Kamala Harris standing on steps with the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, and sort of waving them on.
It's a little more.
Thank you very much, guys. I'm gonna close out the live stream at this time. As you can see, Kamala Harris and her husband right there on the step.
You're waiting at the steps, waving your goodbye. But this is the
new Vice President.
And there are the waves goodbye from the Vice President and her husband as Mike Pence and Karen Pence head off into their next journey in life, whatever that may be.
So we still have quite a bit happening today. Now that we've had the inauguration and the address from the president, the swearing-in ceremony complete.
Thank you very much. I am out from yours truly, Spring G.
For the last time, in an official capacity, anyway. In this time, you never know what the future holds, but for today.
And we don't know exactly. You mentioned, Kim, that it's our understanding that the presidential party, the president.